Hello everybody, this is Thrasho2. A few months ago, I actually wrote myself a creepypasta in my whole creepypasta binge. I was obsessed with watching these things. I would watch them every night, scaring myself to go to sleep. I watched Slender Man, Jeff the Killer, The Rake, and all of the little ones. Uh, I say watched instead of read because I watched the YouTube commenters, and I eventually just felt like reading one of my own. Well, the only one I've ever written. I only have one. The title is Meadow Lane. It all started about a week ago. My family and I moved into a new house in 1913 Meadow Lane. The house was really nice and we got it at a ridiculously low price, so it was a no-brainer to buy this place. It was just me, my mother, and my stepdad Joshua. Strangely, while we were looking at the houses, most of them were for sale, even though this was a seemingly normal residential area. When we moved into the house, we only had one neighbor. The house on the other side was up for sale already. When we tried to talk to our neighbor, a young couple about 25 years of age each, they seemed standoffish and oddly anxious. But the third day of moving our stuff into the new house, we saw our neighbors had a for sale sign in their front yard, and the couple that lived there was nowhere to be found. While I was unpacking some boxes in my room, at around 9 p.m., I looked out the window and saw something strange. It looked like a man crawling on all fours, except his legs were extremely bow-legged and outward, making him move extremely unnaturally. Although this was just my overactive imagination filling in the blanks because it was so dark, I only saw it for a second. After a few minutes of speculating and scaring myself, I decided to dismiss it as a wild coyote and my stress from the move. I decided to leave on my small reading light as a nightlight to quell the fear as I tucked myself in and went to sleep. After what couldn't have been more than a few hours, I woke up to see that creature standing over me. Its face was a few inches away from my own. Its head looked humanoid in shape, even though it was bald and a sickly gray color. It had large black rings around its eyes. The eyes themselves were round and yellow. The expression in those eyes was blank, dead, as if the creature were just a walking corpse. The most terrifying feature about this thing was the fact that it had no lower jaw, allowing its long gray tongue to spill out and drip saliva all over my face. I wanted to scream or cry or punch the creature, but I found myself completely immobile. I don't know if it was from fear or if I was under some kind of hypnotic trance, but I could only lay there, paralyzed. I stared at it, and it stared back at me for what felt like an eternity. I was desperate to move, but no matter what my mind wanted to do, my body simply would not respond. Eventually, I must have blacked out because I woke up in my bed the next morning, covered in sweat. I told my mom about the experience, but she said it was only a nightmare. I shouldn't be too worried about it. That seemed way too real to be a nightmare. I could feel its drool on my face. I could see the details in its eyes. That night, I went to sleep with an aluminum bat under my covers too. If nothing else, just to make myself feel a little more secure. I saw it again that night. Those same lifeless eyes, that same disgusting tongue hovering over me. My hand was wrapped around the bat, but I couldn't move a muscle. I was just lying there again, helpless. The creature, in one swift motion, put its hands on my head. It couldn't have had more than 3 fingers, but its nails were long and pointed. It stuck 2 fingers in both my ears. I could feel its fingers burrowing deeper and deeper into my ear canal until it finally punctured my eardrum. The pain was excruciating. I let out a scream as its fingers kept digging deeper and deeper. I was afraid it would eventually make it to my brain. I must have blacked out from the pain because the next morning, all I remember was waking up in bed again the next day. As I went through my day, I noticed that sound felt a little bit off. They weren't as loud as before. It was as if somebody had turned down the volume on the world. When I talked to my mom about this, she blamed the loud music that I've been listening to, and these nightmares just made me notice the difference. She assured me that this creature, whatever it was, did not exist, and that I was just stretched from the move. I believed her and went to bed that night again, trying not to think of the creature. It visited me again that last night, and stared at me for a while, like it had the past 2 nights. The thing once again shoved its fingers in my ears, and started to slowly make its way towards my eardrums. While I could barely feel its nail touching the drum, it took 2 other fingers and jammed them in my eyes. It did this so quickly that I didn't even have time to close them. I could feel its filthy fingers on my bare eyeballs, slowly adding more and more pressure to them. I screamed in agony as its fingers pushed further and further into my eyes and harder into my ears and harder onto my eyes. I prayed to pass out again. I just wanted the pain to be over. After what felt like a few hours, I finally got my wish, passed out. When I woke up, my vision was blurry and I could hardly hear at all. I went down to breakfast, but to find that my mother and Joshua weren't there. I checked their room and every other room in the house to no avail. There was no notes or any shred of evidence where they would have gone. I looked outside and saw that both of their cars were still sitting in the driveway. I tried to call them, but there appeared to be no phones left in the house. Even my cell phone was missing, even though I put it on the charger last night, like I ritualistically do every night. I would have driven myself to the police station, but I didn't trust myself to drive with my sight and hearing so bad as they were. I would have asked for help from one of my neighbors, except I had no more left. They had all moved away. Besides, I was too scared to leave the house. So I sit here, cataloging my experience, fearing another encounter with the creature. It's already taken my sight and my hearing, as well as my parents away from me. I'm frightened to learn what it'll do next. There is one thing I find imperative to tell you, dear reader. Do not move to Meadow Lane.